Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdist Steve, and today I'm joined by Brian and Colin. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me back.
Thanks for coming back. You're an alumni, but like you're an elite alumni because we've had you on like a million times now, I think, or
I
something.
know it's
Feels like.
yeah. I'm very comfortable being here hanging out.
But just in case people have not encountered you before, you'd be so kind to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. My name's Brian Colin. I do a little bit of everything in the gaming industry. I started out sculpting weird fantasy creatures, then went on to build a 5e campaign setting and bestiary for that world of Revlo. Over that time, I created a product line with Norse Foundry called Cartography, which were dungeon crawls in a deck. I make RPG pins and patches. I make RPG squeeze, which are blind box squishy toys that are random retro monsters for dungeon crawls. I make plush in the same line. I am the creative lead on Vast Grimm, which is published by Infinite Black, which is a sci-fi horror hack of Mork Borg. I'm also the VP of tabletop role-playing development at Infinite Black. My most recent project is Crawling Death Below the Dying Forest, which is a Mork Borg dungeon crawl with an ever-shifting dungeon that's currently on GameFound for just a couple more days. It ends Friday night. And I sculpt, I write, I do layout, I deal with manufacturing. I do a little bit of everything, I think.
A jack of all, for sure.
Yes.
And you got a
Master
fancy
of
title
none.
now.
Yes. Yes. It's cool to be to have the fancy titles.
You're gonna have to give us a tour of your nerd mansion at some point. You must have a nerd mansion with that fancy title.
Yes, I will. I will. And here's room one.
Yeah.
And roll initiative.
Nice. So the project you're currently doing, it's Crawling Death Under some forest.
Below the Dying Forest.
Below the Dying Forest.
Oh, it won't come in with the.
No.
This is a sample book that I had printed just to kind of make sure all the pages were in line and the colors were right and all the things before taking it to GameFound.
So this is a little bit of a different product because it combines one of your old. It builds off of one of your old products that had nothing to do with Mork Borg.
Right, and so because I created Vast Grimm and that was a success and it's all in production right now, I wanted to create something that was just strictly Mork Borg. And I thought, well, I've got all these cartography decks that people got them during the initial Kickstarter. They've gone out to stores and things like that, but I still have a surplus of them. So what could I do with these? And I was like, I could make a Mork Borg adventure. And so I got one of the decks, the below the Forest of the Dead, and I worked that into. I took the cards and worked that into the Mork Borg setting, and thought about, okay, what can I do? Where can I put this in the world? And start creating my own thing, because with their third-party license, there have been over 1,000 creations since they've opened it up by different people all around the world making stuff for the setting. So I thought I want to carve out my own little niche in their world. And so I sat down with the deck and I brought my kids to the dining table. I was like, okay, I want to make this adventure. Here are a couple ideas for some story arcs. What do you think could happen here? And they helped kind of seed some of the ideas. And then I started laying out one room card at a time. I was like, okay, knowing these are some of the storylines, what would be in this room? And what would be in this room? And they kind of helped with some of the rooms with giving me notes and ideas as to what could be in there. And then I elaborated on that and built it out even more.
So everyone knows children tend to be more creative when they're younger, and your kids are starting to get older. What are you going to do, to fill that gap, in creativity once you can no longer exploit your kids? Are you going to have your wife push out some more so that you can keep this train going?
No. Hopefully they'll stick with it and want to be in the gaming industry. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm hoping they'll look back on. Like inside the book, they have credits. They're created by me and both of them. Then they also have additional room concepts that have their names on it. So like, I'm hoping they'll get to pick up a book when they're in their teenage years and be like, huh, okay, maybe this is cool.
Yeah. And for anyone that doesn't know and is not familiar with Brian's work, most of, if not everything he's done has been like in collaboration with his kids. If my understanding is correct.
I try to rope them in and bring them in to try and get them to like the nerdy things that I like, because it hopefully it will strengthen the bond that we have, and it will make them continue to uh, allow them to explore their creativity as they get older, because a lot of parents don't want kids going in creative industries, and I'd much
Sure.
rather have them pursue something they enjoy than seek the mighty dollar, and hopefully then the dollars will flow from what they enjoy at one point in their lives.
So I, I was introduced to you and by what you do through the sculptures that you made, and you made these really fantastical creatures, and you know, you, the process that you talked about before was your son would kind of like come up with these ideas for monsters, and then you'd sketch them out, and then you get between the two of you hash out, and then you would sculpt them, and eventually that became a 5e book.
Yes, there were quite a few creatures in there that he did the initial concepts on, and a lot of that, and then certain areas of the world that he helped come up with, and then there were a ton that I just did on my own, because it's hard to at that time pry like a 5 or 6 year old,
Yeah,
7-year-old to get like the actual. Okay, we need 40 creatures in this book. Come on, give me some ideas.
pesky child
So
labor laws.
yes, exactly.
But anyway, but and then from there you sort of going out in other directions. But it's this cool genesis of, or do you want to explain the process of how you came up with Vast Grim?
Sure. So it was it was November of 2020, November 2020, end of October, beginning of November. My friend Ross ran a Mork Borg game for us. It was, I think, the last time we had all gotten together in the same room to actually play. And or maybe it was online. I can't remember. Anyway, we played, and I was just very inspired after playing it. The rules were so light. The the crunch was not. It wasn't super crunchy, but it was very flavorful. I was completely invested in my character, even though they died in that game. Like, it was like, okay, it was okay that they died because it had to happen. But I hadn't sculpted anything for quite a while, and it inspired me to sculpt this giant warhound, which I wanted to paint in just black and white and maybe one hint of another color. Um, and when I did that, I saw it and I was like, okay, I like this, but I don't want to put it in Mork Borg. I want to create a setting around it. And I want to do sci-fi, because I've been playing a whole lot of fantasy lately, and I want to mix things up. So I hit Ross up and I was like, Ross, here's what I'm thinking. I want to create a sci-fi game using these rules because they have a third-party license. You want to help out? And so he jumped on, and together we created Vast Grim over a very short period of time, I think, because the idea happened in November. In January, I got hired by Infinite Black of 2021. And I was like, David, here's this thing that I've been started. I think Infinite Black should publish it because it fits in with all the horror themes that the existing fan base that Infinite Black is doing. And so I was like, would you have an interest in publishing it? So right at that point, then I get to start writing, sculpting, doing layout, all on the clock, all on this IP that I had come up with. So we were able to crowdfund it in July of that year. We went to crowdfunding, so it was like a 6-month process, 6 to 8 month process of concept to building it all out and having a finished product ready to go to the printers.
And and all your products are very unique in the sense that you don't use traditional illustration in a lot of your stuff. It's what they call three-dimensional illustration
Yeah.
in the art world, I believe. Um,
Yes.
which is also like very time consuming, but it gives it
Well,
like this really distinct and unique look.
and for Vast Grim, there were three main artists. There was myself, where I did a lot of larger sculptures, and then there was David Laraka, who's the owner of Infinite Black, who has been known for his horror illustrations, and that's what led him down the road of like creating Elder Dice. And then Alan Panical, who does like fractured realism sci-fi stuff, where I used some of his art and incorporated that into the layout. Then there's a few other illustrations in there. Ross did a couple of illustrations in the book, and there's a couple other little speckles throughout the book as well. But I tried to figure out a way to do a mashup like of the three main artists working together, so that it would come together in a really good collage of styles.
And I think you definitely done it. I can't wait to see the actual, get the book in my hand and see that. And you've done
I
a little
know.
bit. It looks like you're doing the same thing in this adventure as well.
Yes, very much so. This one, most of the sculpting that I did for it, I did on panel board. So it was a rigid flat surface, and then I
Mhm.
sculpted on top to almost do like a relief. But I tried to get that so like the picture behind me is the giant evil that lies beneath the forest, and that is sculpted on top of a panel board. And I have a couple of those original pieces in the Game Found campaign itself. A couple of them have already been picked up as add-ons. So
Yeah, and that, I mean, all that stuff looks really good. And if you're not familiar with Brian's work, like the earlier stuff that I know you from is all these giant 3-dimensional, like basically it looks like someone killed a D&D monster and
yep.
put their head on a wall. Like that, like they're life size. They're huge.
Giant life-size monster trophies, but they're all almost all of them are creatures from my own fantasy world.
Yeah. So does that mean you're back to sculpting more, or is it still tight with time restraints?
It's a little bit about like I'm sculpting a lot more just straight on board versus like life-size
Yeah.
creatures. But I've been doing a lot of kit bashing as well, where I'm making spaceships and space stations using random bits of plastic from like my daughter's Christmas present wrappings and like Jello cups and things like that, and then like Gundam models where I take bits and pieces and glue them together to make space stations and spaceships for Bassgram.
Did you ever think you'd be utilizing those skills as a part of your basically your job, your career path?
No, never, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I get to play make believe and make weird stuff all the time.
Yeah. You know, I should connect you with my brother sometime. He also does 3-dimensional stuff.
Yes.
If
I haven't checked in on his work in a while. I just stopped popping up on my feeds, but I really liked what he was doing.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing is, it's very time consuming, as you already know. And then if you can't find people to pay you to do that, then it becomes hard to continue doing it.
Yes, yeah. You've got to be very passionate about it and love what you're doing to keep continuing to put it out.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's at least like when you draw something, it's very easy to like duplicate that. Like
Right.
after you do it.
Yep.
So
And especially with like his with like stop, wasn't he getting into stop motion work with
I
his
think he
pieces?
had played with that a little bit, but mostly it was just like the 3-dimensional stuff. I
Gotcha.
don't know. Basically, he liked to play with dolls, is what I saw. So
Which is okay. I mean,
it's
that's
fine.
totally what you're into.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what is the what are you going to do next after? Where are you going to work next? Because you got Mork Borg, you got Vast Grim, you've done some 5e stuff.
Sure.
Do you know
Well, I
what
mean,
the future direction is?
well, we'll continue to put out Bassgrim content. So it's currently at the printer. It's getting closer to wrapping up. So once that's out, I've got a couple of books that we're working on right now that will launch after people have the Bassgrim stuff in hand. I want to continue building out that universe and give people more content for it, so they can there's people already playing in the digital space with it with the PDFs. There's people that are already creating third-party content for it, which is awesome. We've got some fiction already being written that people are writing from the games that they've played. So I want to keep giving people tools to enrich the games that they're playing with that. I've my kids and I did a thing called Over the Troll Bridge, which was kind of like a short using the Together We Go open game license, which is like a D20 and a D6. And we've got the basics down for that, and that's available on itch, and anybody can download the community copies. And I think we'll probably expand that a little bit more, add some more classes, and build out the setting a bit more. And then if Crawling Death did well, and I think I'd like to probably do another adventure using one of the other cartography decks to maybe build a series of adventures that fit within Mork Borg, and then who knows where things will take me outside of that.
So does someone need the cartography decks in order to run this adventure?
No, absolutely not. Inside the book itself are the pages. So you can, to randomly generate the room with the book, you roll a D6 and a D10. And that helps you determine the room number that you put down next. You can do it theater of the mind style and draw, or you could draw it out on a map if you got together with all your friends at a big table. Or there's also VTT assets and a Roll20 module add-on as well. So you could do it that way. So you don't need the deck at all. If you want the deck, it's available as an add-on, but you can just flip through the pages and be like, okay, this is room 37. It looks like this. Here's what's inside. And then with the different storylines that are in there, in the back of the book, there's a list of the rooms that you need for those story arcs. So because there's 4 adventure hooks, you need certain cards or certain rooms for those for that story to make sense. But you can add as many additional rooms as you want. Or if you did it as a giant mega dungeon and included all 55 rooms, at some point you would intersect with those storylines in there.
And there's multiple storylines that people can kind of dig into.
Yes, I'm curious to see which one we get into tonight on your show.
Yeah, tonight at 8 p.m. we're going to be playing. Brian's going to be running the adventure for us. I've played through once already, so I'm kind of curious to see what a second run through looks like.
Yep, I'll definitely have to pick one of the other storylines to do.
But yeah, and it was a lot of fun, and even in the one that we did, there was different factions that kind of pop up, and not only that, like you're also tying it to something else, right? That's the idea. Can we talk about that, or is that still under wraps?
Oh no. So one of the stretch goals that was unlocked is an adventure that merges this Vast Grimm adventure, or this Mork Borg adventure, and Vast Grimm. So if you're playing Vast Grimm, you can come into the Mork Borg universe through this bonus stretch goal adventure, or you can go from Mork Borg into Vast Grimm. So the PDF is free to all the backers because it's been unlocked already. And then there's also a physical copy as well, which is going to be exclusive to GameFound. I'm just going to print enough copies of that zine with a handful of overs for this, because we'll probably reprint it at a later date in an official Vast Grimm compendium at some point that Infinite Black will put out.
Cool. So how many times has this adventure been run now? Like, I know you're gonna do it for us tonight. You did it over on +1 XP.
So it has been run 4 times, and I'm running it again tomorrow night on Victory Condition Gaming.
Nice.
Yep.
I'm still amazed that I was able to play in this campaign or in that game and have my character not die. So
yeah, I think there'll probably be some death tonight.
Nice.
But there were some close calls last time.
There were some anytime I took damage was a close call.
Yep.
So, anytime someone swung in my direction.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the beautiful things is, people are expendable in this game.
Yeah, for sure. And also, Tony from +1 XP did a great video on this adventure as well. People should check out.
Yeah, he did a wonderful recap. He really does a great job, and I loved how he talked about the different monkeys that were in there, since two of the characters had monkeys as companions in the game as well.
That was the selling point for me using that character, the monkeys.
Yes.
So Mork Borg, also Vast Grimm, have random character generators. You just push a button, it spits out a character with all kinds of random quirks and stuff like that. And I absolutely love that. You just hit the button until you find one that you like.
Yep, it couldn't get any easier. And I mean, also, boom, you print out 3 characters and have characters on standby just in case you get axed somewhere in the middle of the game.
Ted says he's got 3 characters ready.
Good.
He's convinced he's going to die.
Okay, I think we need to make that happen then.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ted.
What are the different cartography decks?
So there's Enter the Fiery Pits, Through the Icy Divide, Into the Waiju, which is a desert one, Below the Forest of the Dead, and Survive the Badlands.
So that's kind of like, so have you kind of like marked out places in Mork Borg that already exist?
No, not yet, just because I wanted to see how this did. And I've been so wrapped up. I mean, I did this as a very short campaign. And then I went to GaryCon like 2 days after it launched. And then it's just been, so I haven't really thought through which ones I'd want to work in next. But I asked my son which one he'd want to do next, and he wanted to do the Fiery Pits because that's always been his favorite, and that's the region that he came up with. So May have to figure out a way to work that in, although I don't recall there being any volcano areas within the main map. I'd have to check some of the third party stuff
Yeah.
and see if anybody else has done any volcanic stuff that maybe I can build on top of that.
Kids love lava.
Yes, they do. Yes, I do, which is part of why I incorporated lava into the over the troll bridge setting. The idea is that the city, the big city within that game that everybody lives in, is floating above a sea of lava, and you have to go out and get treasure, bring it back, and the treasure gets melted down by the forge to keep the city floating above the lava, so the city never gets too far down and gets melted.
I hate when that happens.
I know.
How was GaryCon?
It was good. It was like, I didn't plan properly. Like I was like, okay, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do it, but I'm only gonna go for 2 days instead of the 4 days. I'm gonna drive up, and in Georgia, it took me like 11 or 12 hours to get to Chicago the first night, and I spent the night with at my friend Alan's house, who was his art was in Vast Grim, and then we drove up the final hour and a half to get there on Friday. As soon as we got there, got our badges, looked around for a minute or two, and found the room that I was running a Vast Grim game in it, starting at 10 o'clock. So I ran a couple of games, ran into some people that I know, and got to hang out and have fun. And it seems like a really good show to go to if you want to go and just play and have fun. A lot. So I haven't decided if I'm going to go back next year yet or not, because it's a long drive from down here. So. But there was a lot going on, and it's good for getting to see people that you might not get to see in a relaxed convention atmosphere at other shows, because people tend to get really busy at places like Gen Con.
So Brian wants to know, DCC funnels often have a note to the DM about spots in the story where a new PC could slide in. Are there specific opportunities for a new PC to join in if they all get whacked?
There are not in this. I think that would just be up to the GM to figure out, like, they're in the next room, and be able to figure out a way to work them in, because there's so many. There's 4 different storylines. There's lots of ways to possibly work them in if they are. There's one gang that's taken over the tunnels, that have claimed these tunnels as their lair. They could be like somebody that's easily was part of that gang, but has decided not to be a part of it anymore.
Former cultist.
Yes, that too.
For sure. So did you get a chance to check out Satine and Jameson's wedding?
No, I drove up that day. If I would have planned a little better, I could have woke up like maybe an hour and a half earlier, and just let Alan know, hey, I'm just picking you up, let's go. But I didn't plan well enough ahead for that.
Yeah, I guess at Gen Con they had told us they were doing it. Like, I think that's when they hatched the scheme at Gen Con. Yeah. And then we got invited. I felt really special. But then I saw they invited everybody, and I felt less special. So
you're special. It's okay. You're special.
Yeah, that's what the little yellow bus I rode said as well.
Yeah, but I heard it was a really good time, and that it was a really good ceremony. So
yeah, the pictures that came back from it looked great.
Yeah,
like a lot of fun. So how many games did you run while you were at GaryCon?
I only ran 2. I thought, like, I only scheduled 2 because I wasn't sure. Like, I didn't want to fill up both days, because I wanted to be able to check out the show as well. I played in a game. I went to a writer's talk that a lot of people from DCC put on, just to hear, because like I've never gone to any writing lessons or seminars on writing adventures, so I thought it'd be good to hear other people's perspective aside from what I've just kind of picked up from playing games and writing stuff. And then just did some networking, just being out and getting in front of people and chatting folks up. So if I did it again, I'd probably run a couple more games, just because it was fun getting to run things for people that I didn't know.
I'm terrible at going to cons, because to do it effectively, you really do need a little bit of planning, and that's not my forte. I just show up and go hang out and see what's going on.
Well, a lot can happen in those non-event hours where you're just socializing with people and getting to know folks.
Oh yeah, there's definitely benefit to that. But what I do find that I end up missing out on is like some really good panels.
Yep.
that that I might have been interested in, and then I find out like the next day I was like, oh, I should check that out.
Speaking of panels, I've got a panel that's been accepted, but it hasn't been given a time slot at Gen Con on third-party Mork Borg developers, where I've got a
Nice.
slew of people that have created content for Mork Borg, where we're going to be talking about how we created stuff, why we did things certain ways, and how it got into the Mork Borg ecosystem.
Who's gonna be on that panel?
So I think at the moment it's currently probably going to be co-hosted by Tony Vicinda of Plus One EXP and Walton Wood, who does a lot of the editing. He also is the editor on my Crawling Death book. We also have, let's see, hang on just one second, because I can easily go and check it out because my memory is terrible.
I feel that so hard.
Yes, that's why I write things down. We've got Philip Reed, who has released so much additional content for so many things. He's run so many Kickstarters. We've got Luke Stratton, who just wrapped up Pirate Borg on Kickstarter, which blew things out of the water. We've got we've got Michael. Why am I losing his last name right now? Who did the slasher zine for Mork Borg, and then we also have Rugos Cone. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but yeah. So we've got a lot of folks.
Yeah, Pirate Borg, 161K, not bad at all.
Right? Yep.
I hear people
Michael Mars. Sorry.
I'm sorry too. I hear people saying you can't make money unless you do a 5e thing, but I would say that's not true.
Well, I mean, then also with the Old School Essentials that recently funded, and they did really well with Mothership that did like 1.4 million. I mean, there's a lot of non-5e stuff that's bringing in the people.
Yeah, it's always about presentation and marketing, right? Can you get eyeballs on it, and does it look pretty? Like,
sure.
If you get, that's like the biggest thing is just getting them there.
Yes. Yep. And then building that audience.
Mork Borg, you burn the book. What fate would a vast grim book meet if the world ends in the game? I think you gotta disintegrate it.
I think so. Yeah, just completely disintegrate it.
Best marketing tool ever. Just
destroy
your book, and then you got to go buy a new one. Darn.
Yep. And I've seen people that have thrown knives into their Mork Borg books and all sorts of good stuff.
Oh man, that feels like that should go into the marketing, right? Like a live stream of burning the book at some point while you have a project going on. I think there's a missed opportunity.
Yep.
Brian Smith says we should do a pig themed one called Pork Borg.
There is, Ex Libris Mork Borg is a catalog that has all the third-party content in there. Somebody did just do a Pork Borg. There's also a Duck Borg, which is like a DuckTales take on Mork Borg, which is really funny. There's all sorts of good stuff out there. I wanted to do a pigs in space version of Vast Grim, because I've got the toys of that from like when they were released in like the early 2000s.
Can't go wrong with Muppets, man.
Right.
So some of my favorite like TikTok videos are Muppets. So
nice. I still have not quite wrapped my old brain around TikTok.
Yeah, it's weird. It's probably better that you don't. It's a bit of a time sink, right?
Sure.
And it's a trap because I'm like, a lot of times I'll avoid certain content because I'm like, I don't want to spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes with this, right? And then like you go on TikTok
2 hours later.
It's only a minute, right? But then an hour later, in 60 TikTok videos later, it's like, oh. And there's a lot of information. Like, there's a lot of stuff. There's a huge RPG community over there. Beggar Talk is like the non-D&D RPGs.
Okay.
And then there's tons of other communities over there. Like, tons of animal videos. Like one of my favorite TikTokers was like, "Now I'm going to ruin this animal for you," and then they hit you with facts, and it's like all the cute smart animals, like they're terrible. Like the smarter a species is, the more likely they are to be terrible to other things.
Point in case humans.
Yeah, that's just there, right? Like as we inch towards nuclear annihilation.
Yep.
Very,
Oh, one project that I forgot to mention when we were talking about upcoming projects. As part of Infinite Black, we have a new dice line that's launching on August or April 19th. I'm looking at
yeah.
the A on my calendar. It's like, no, we're not in August. April 19th, which is we're relaunching One Up Dice, which should be a fun retro themed game dice that I think people will get into.
Yeah,
Especially Ted.
It's definitely really cool. This is the second go around. You guys got your ass kicked by a plumber, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
The first time around.
And
time for
plumbers.
round 2.
Yes, this is called One Up Dice 2: The Revenge.
Yeah. Clogging everything this time. Yep. No, they looked fantastic, and it's a little bit of a departure for Infinite Black too, right? Like This is not creepy.
No, it's but it still hits like all the things that we kind of grew up on, which we're trying to make sure that when we create stuff, we make stuff that we're going to enjoy and stuff that we want to have. And playing those retro video games growing up, and also sitting around the table in the basement playing the D&D, it all kind of just blends the two worlds together.
Is the mall behind you for sale?
It was, but it was already picked up. It was an add-on in the on the Game Found campaign, and that was one of the first buys.
No,
maybe not. Maybe this one wasn't sold. Hang on. I have to check the Game Found page.
Do you do prints of the stuff that you make?
I have not so far. Which, just because like most of the I tried doing some of the sculpture pieces early on, like the Revelo stuff, and a lot of people just weren't into photos of sculptures. Yeah. But some of the newer stuff, like the Astro Zombie thing, like things that are a little more like a mix of graphic design and sculptures, that might be something that people would be into.
Yeah, because I mean that's what Ryan would do. He would do his like art dials, and then he would create like a scene or a collage,
right, and
then photograph them,
right,
and that was kind of like the finished thing.
Yes.
And like I know he's been in what is it, Spectrum and some of the other stuff, but like so the Prince is, I think that like the Prince is what he was trying to do, to try and get more of into like a mass market.
I may do some before Gen Con this year of some of the things from Vascular. We'll have to see, maybe print them on metal to give it that shiny look. Yes, the thing behind me, Mouth of Abyssal, is still available on the Game Found page. It's not the same coloration, because once I did more purples and hues in the original sculpt, and then I just adjusted the color when taking it into Photoshop to put into layout in the book itself to make it fit the Mork Borg theme a little bit better.
You've got a couple of them up on Game Found.
Yeah, I've got two more that haven't been purchased yet. Abyssal Salivation.
If you wanted Scooter, you're out of luck.
Yep.
Or the Creeping Vines. I don't like that they're grayed out because people bought them.
Oh, are they grayed out? See, I see it from my side. Can you still click on it and see what it looks like, or is it just that?
Okay, yeah, you can click on it. Maybe it's not grayed out. It does
just be photographed poorly.
It might just. It seems a little bit, muted, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just they're just not as bright as the other ones.
Yeah, those are a little more muted, the color palettes on those.
Yeah, nice. So how's it feel to be sculpting again and like moving in this direction, because it's quite different than what you were doing before?
It's good. So one of the things that I've done is I'm using a completely different material than I used on pretty much all of the larger sculptures. I had sinus surgery like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, and I feel like the materials I was using before, because it's an epoxy, and when you put the two pieces together, it releases these smells that I think were affecting my sinuses. Really, it's just like self-diagnosed as to this is why I was getting sick all the time.
I'm pretty sure I was giving myself brain cancer, but
Right. So I've moved on to a paper clay, which is a lot. It's not as sturdy and as strong as the material I was using before, and it doesn't adhere to things quite as well. So I'm still testing and playing with that and seeing how it works out. Like, so I haven't done a lot of larger pieces. I do. Maybe I should put on one of the pieces that I did for the stretch goal for the Vasgrim crossover, because I haven't put that on there, and that one might be interesting to people because it's one of it's the first alien species that I'm introducing into Vasgrim.
Nice.
But it's good. It feels good to be making art all the time. Like between writing and sculpting and drawing and all that stuff, it's really satisfying to know that I am just making things constantly.
Can people add on the cartography cards to their pledge?
Yes. That's in one of the add-ons. I think that is just it's one of the add-ons that's further down the page. If you look on the left-hand side, there's a navigation, and you can go straight down to add-ons and click we've got the Into the Asteroid Zine, which is an add-on, the straight VTT assets or the Roll20 VTT package, the Undead Queen patch, because I like making patches and pins and things like that. And that was also, if you were following the campaign before the launch, you automatically get that in as a bonus. And then the cartography deck.
I'm looking at the 3 pages, or still like a 6-page layout that it's showing on the GameFound, and I must say I like the art a lot better than in the original Mork Borg book. I think this is fantastic.
Thank you. I mean, I love what Johan did in that, and it is completely inspiring. Like, I wouldn't have made Vasgrim, I don't think, if I hadn't cracked the pages of Mork Borg.
Yeah, well, it's really cool to see what you've done with it and kind of really made it your own.
Thank you. And some of it, like the middle spread, the Malkala, the Mad Warlock, is an existing, like, I pulled that from some royalty-free art that's really old art, and then I just bastardized it, drew over top of it, and destroyed it a little bit.
Nice. Well, you did a good job of destroying it.
Thank you.
Who did the Abyssian?
I did.
That's fantastic. I really like it. I like all the textures in there.
Thanks. Yeah, I did that. I used Procreate on that. So most of the things that I didn't sculpt that I just did on my iPad and just drew things that way and kept working it out with that. So I've got, I think, a handful of illustrations in there that all feel consistent together, but different from the 3-dimensional pieces.
Yeah. Have your kids picked up on any of your artistic talents?
My daughter draws a lot more, and I think eventually she'll totally be into doing some of this stuff, I think. But she's only 8, so it just needs some more refinement.
Yeah, both of my parents were very artistic, but I didn't get an ounce of it. Like I used to draw a lot up until like my tweens, and actually Ryan used to like to watch me draw and stuff, but like just hit a certain point and just stopped getting better, right? Like it like hit a plateau, and like a lot of things, it's like, well, if you're not good at it, you tend to just stop, and I did.
Yeah.
So
well, I think eventually you break through that, like, especially if you take some time away and then go back into it and have like fresh perspectives, and I think it's easier to jump back in.
Brian would like to know if you have any advice for Procreate noobs.
Download different brushes that people make and incorporate those, because I found that the core brushes that are in there are not the ones that I like to use. And then like I use like maybe 4 or 5 specific brushes, and that's what I'm comfortable with. And then also I like to take it from Procreate back into Photoshop afterwards, especially when doing page layout, because certain things I'm more comfortable with in Photoshop because I've been using it for so many years. And also work in masks, use masking in Procreate, because that allows you to keep certain things and layer things a little bit better.
All of that is Greek to me.
Yeah.
um, what is it? What is the next convention you're gonna hit?
So the next one is Gen Con.
Okay.
Infinite Black will have a booth there. My company Creature Curation will have a booth there. I'll probably bounce back and forth between those a little bit. I'm running some Vast Grim games there. I've got the one panel that I talked about. I've another panel that's been accepted is Let's Make an RPG, which is an hour and a half long panel where it'll be like an improv interacting with the audience to create a really rules light RPG in a short amount of time that will then post up online somewhere to be able to allow people to build on from there.
So almost like an interactive, collaborative game jam.
Yes, exactly. So hopefully that'll go well because it's the first year of that, and that's one of my goals for this year was to get on panels at conventions because usually I stay behind the booth. I try and like, hey, look at my stuff, buy my stuff. But I've got some help this year at Gen Con, and I'm going to step away and try and become more a part of the whole convention, not just the vendor hall.
Yeah, I think that's good. I kind of dread like having enough products to actually have a booth. The idea of standing behind a booth for 8 hours a day does not appeal to me.
I've got way too many things now for like my 10 by 10 booth.
Yeah.
Just too many different product lines.
Well, this past year you had a nice big booth.
Yes, I did, but that's because a lot of people dropped out.
Yeah.
So like the booth next to me, there wasn't anybody there, so I got to extend to the full 10 by 20.
Yeah.
Which, that was the right amount of space I think that I need.
There you go. You just have to figure out a way to detain until Gen Con is over, or whoever's going to be near you.
Yeah, it's like, who's going to be there? Okay, somebody's got to stop their car from getting to Indianapolis.
I feel like that could be an RPG all in itself.
I think you're right. I'm going to recruit you, Dave.
I'd be terrible. I'm fat and old now. I'm not good for that kind of stuff. So you've got like this fantastical, whimsical troll game. You got Vast Grim, which is sci-fi horror, doing some Mork Borg stuff, which is fantasy horror. And you also have like a 90s kind of Monster of the Week, Stranger Things type game in the works as well. What genre haven't you tackled that you want to add horror to?
So, and like the horror for me isn't super like horror, like creep. It's more gross splatter horror than anything for me. I don't know what would be next aside from those, because those are.
You also have a lot on your plate already.
I do. There's lots of things spinning. So I like the Dietrich stuff, which is like the 90s monster creepy thing. I should probably get back to and wrap up. I need to finish up the Over the Troll Bridge and expand that out. So one of my goals for this year, like I try to give myself goals at the beginning of each year just to see what I can attain. And one that I mentioned was the getting on panels at conventions, which there's a check mark. And the other is creating content for 2 systems I haven't really done before. I consider this current project different because it's completely different from Vast Grim. So it's in the Mork Borg universe. Yeah. And then Over the Troll Bridge was the second one. So I don't know, like I've already kind of conquered that goal for this year, and we're only January, February, March. We're only 4 months in. So I'm sure there will be more to be had, but I think I would like to probably get back to Dietrich's and wrap that up before this year's out, because it's like a self-contained game set in the 90s, set around a military base, because I grew up in Maryland and there was a military base in my city where they did a lot of medical experiments and like a lot of cancer experiments and things like that. Like I played in the creek that ran out of the military base into my neighborhood. As I like walked my skateboard on base to visit my friend in middle school, there were little tiny pipes in the ground where smoke was coming out of it, where they were burning the animals that they had done testing on because they couldn't let them get out into the general populace. So I have it like it's a very Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, very supernatural kind of mashup set in the 90s. And it's all just based around like me and my friends hanging out at Denny's or Bob's Big Boy. And it all kind of has that like weird stuff's going on in this town and where's it all stemming from.
Do you think you'll ever move away from tinkering and start like making your own system, or are you happy to just like play in these other playgrounds and put your spin on it?
Well, that one is like it's deviated significantly from the, like, I had originally started working on it using the Mork Borg rules, but I realized it was like I wanted the magic and I wanted all that stuff to be significantly different. So that one deviated quite a bit from that. So I think that would be the first one that would be its own kind of rules set, but it's very similar. Um, I wouldn't want to create a whole I wouldn't want to create a gigantic rule system just because mechanics aren't really my thing.
Yeah.
My brain doesn't do mechanics well, which is part of why I like rules like games. I want it to be simple, easy, and fast and get to the narrative storytelling, but still have enough dice rolls that people feel like, hey, there's a reason I brought these dice to the table.
Yeah. And also like rules can be very subjective, or a lot of rules can be very subjective because you have like page RPGs like Honey Heist, right, where there's
Right.
almost no rules to something super crunchy and complex. So there is a lot of room there.
Yeah.
Like we're just starting to kind of like dip our toe in creating games, and I think like we'd rather tinker with things that other people have done. Also, like early on, we did a video about creating RPGs, and like for the most part, we've just never really felt the urge because there's so many
There's something
good
out there.
ones out there.
And as a creator, there's also, if you're writing something or creating something for another system that already exists, you have a built-in fan base.
Yeah.
So there's already people there that want more content for the game that they're already playing. If you're creating it all from scratch, then you're starting at ground zero. You're either building upon your own fan base, or you're just trying to throw it out and cast a giant net and hope that people are interested in what you're putting out, either the genre or something about it just like resonates with them.
And the thing is too, like a lot of the systems have, the different systems have open licensing anyway.
Yep.
That being said, you can't even copyright mechanics anyway. So like, even I mean, you couldn't advertise that like I'm using Fate, but like
Right.
they couldn't actually stop you from using it either.
Right. But I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well use something that has an open license.
Yeah,
and
build on that audience.
Exactly.
And also, there's the moral gray area there too. Is like, how that's going to be perceived, how that is.
Right. We're a small community. I mean, everybody knows everybody in some degree or another. Even if I haven't met this one person, my friend here is friends with this person. So the gaming industry is too small to be a jerk to somebody else.
To make enemies.
Right.
Yeah. That is so true. So you're doing a lot of stuff right now. Do you actually have time to play games?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, mainly because I have to play games. I have to run games and I have to play games to see how things work. And we currently have a weekly game for Infinite Black, and then I'm sprinkling in other games because my kids and a couple other kids have been playing in a ongoing, off and on Bass Grim game that I've been running. And so I don't get to play often in other people's games or run games that are just like strictly, hey, let's get together and play a game. Usually there's other ulterior motives to what I'm doing.
Or it doesn't sound like you're a player very often either.
No, some of the Infinite Black games, about every other week, it looks like I'll be a player, a good chunk of them. So
also, like, kind of, even when you're designing games, you definitely need to be on the other side as well to see how things play and to see how well other people can play them, right? Like without without the person that made it running it.
Yeah, it's fun getting to hear feedback on people playing the adventures that were put out for the by like people like yourself and the guest adventures for Bass Grim, and hearing other people in the Infinite Black Discord saying, "Hey, how did you do this? How did this work for you? Like how did the adventurers get out? How did the Legion get out of this place?" Because and so just hearing how other people handled it or how they interpreted what was written is very interesting.
That it was definitely fun to run, and it was interesting to encounter someone that actually had run it And I
Uh-huh.
was like, oh, that's cool. I don't know. I just ripped the thing off from Star Wars and put my spin on it and thought it was, thought it would be funny, right? Like I know, like there's different philosophies, but like I'm not trying to hide what I do when I do that stuff. I want them
Right.
to figure it out. I just want to
Right.
see at what point they figure it out and how they react to it.
Uh-huh. I like having Easter eggs and having things inspired by other stuff because we're all highly influenced by popular culture and the things that we grow up on. So why
Yeah.
not lean into it a bit and give us those self-gratifying moments?
Yeah, like you can pretend like, oh, I'm 100% original and haven't been influenced by anything, or like you said, you can just kind of like lean into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did a St. Patty's Day D&D game that was basically just the Leprechaun movie. And after they did it, they're like, "Screw you, Dave! you just you just ran us through the Leprechaun movie, and it was a terrible movie the first time."
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I know. I couldn't resist. Some of our most memorable gaming experiences are just us ripping off different things.
Yeah.
My brother, like the Bass Rutten Bass Rankin, stop motion,
Uh-huh.
Christmas specials. He was good for like one of those a year.
Uh-huh. Well, like all throughout college, the games that I would run was I would be like running. I was using D20 Modern, and I was running like games set in the Sin City world, and I'd like have things that happened in the Sin City comics happening on the side, so
Uh,
they'd kind of see little bits and pieces, even though they were weaving their own stories in the universe.
nice. So when you gonna get your son to start running games? He seems it's about a good age for that.
Yeah. So he's ran a couple of games. Like when there's chunks of time when like the kids game that I run, I just can't be involved just because I don't have enough time. So every now and again, they'll mix up between which of the kids is running a game there. So, but I don't sit in on those games. They just kind of run them and see where they go.
That's super
But
cool.
yeah, but I think for a little bit longer, I think they need me to run games just to keep them getting more ideas of the best, not the best ways, but different ways to run games so they don't completely railroad it. And so they don't, so the person that is running the game isn't completely dictating everything.
It teaches
Yeah.
structures, right, and how to
Yeah.
how for that how they can create them, and because yeah, like I guess like when being that age and playing games, it was very very linear, very railroady, and but that's just like kind of like where you're at.
Yeah, totally.
So there's nothing wrong with that. So you're
No.
not invited into the games that they run, huh?
Well, no,
That's what
when
I'm hearing.
it's usually when like, hey, I can't do it. I've got something else I got to do, but you
Yeah,
kids should still play together. So
yeah.
who wants to run the game this week? And then they run a game.
That's cool. They're young and already like rotating GMs, like
Yep.
you
And
know.
like my nephew, he's currently writing a campaign. So when we go up to for his birthday, we're going to do the birthday thing, and then he wants my kids and me to play the game that he's been writing on the side.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And what game do they usually play?
So when they run stuff, they usually run 5e of some setting variation.
Yeah.
And then I'm sorry about the some car in the neighbor's driveway.
That's
And
fine.
and then I've been the past 4 games, I think I've been running Bass Grim games for them.
Okay. Do they seem to have a preference?
Um, I think they're really enjoying Bass Grim at the moment. I think it's harder for them to I think it was easy for them to get into because there's a lot already on the character sheet that kind of shows what their personality is and things like that. One of the kids, like, they kept regenerating the character until it had X amount of hit points, and that's all they cared about.
Oh yeah,
So it didn't
yeah.
really matter what the rest of the sheet had. It was just about the hit points, not really understanding that in a very low, like starting off at level 0, a lot of times you might only have 1 or 2 hit points. And it's more about the flavor of the character than it is about that, because you'll gain that as you level
Yeah.
up. But yeah, they were excited to play that again and again. So I think we'll probably stick with that just because it's way easier for me to run, and the kids don't know the rules enough to call me out on stuff.
There you go. Have they tried Mork Borg yet?
They my son has played with us,
Yeah.
but none of the other kids yet. So I'm because they're like 12, 13, like I'm hesitant a little bit about, hey, go pick up this book with the upside down cross on it on the
Oh
front of
yeah,
it. And, I'm okay with, my kids having that stuff, but I don't know how other people's parents will react because, you know,
that's true. I don't know. I'm pretty atheist. I don't really. I guess I don't think about it as much.
right, right. But when having to deal with other people's kids, it's something to take into consideration. So, I mean,
Yeah,
even my book has like shit and things like Vasgrim has that in it, like words like that in it. And I'm like, okay, they may get a character sheet with this, but it's not a big deal.
yeah. They can sneak that past their parents. It's fine.
They've seen this before. They've heard it by now.
That's true. That's true. But I imagine like a game like Mork Borg or Vascrum is much easier for them to pick up and learn. It's much simpler than 5e. There's far less moving parts.
Oh yeah, I mean it's so easy, especially once we start playing. And you roll the d20, you add your modifier for whatever it is, and there you
Yeah.
are.
Would you ever considering like doing like a 5e expansion for any of the games you come up with?
Uh, I'd have to have somebody else do it. So like, because like when I did the Revelo stuff, Isaac did all the 5e mechanic stuff,
Yeah.
and so somebody else would have to do it because it's just not, my head just can't do it, and my head doesn't want to do it.
Just set the goal at 100K, and either you're doing it or you're not.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'd rather do stuff that I can. I tend to be a bit controlling about projects that I work on. Like, I want to be able to, like, just in case somebody fell off the face of the earth, I want to be able to pick up and fill in the hole and be able to take care of it myself if I need to. So the chances are very, very slim on that side. Plus, there's tons of great 5e content out there.
Yeah.
There's so much out there. You can get it from somebody else, something similar, or yeah.
I look at it a little bit differently. One, I look at it as like it's kind of like free money. But then
Yep.
but then the other, not just that, but the idea of like, there's a bunch of players that only play D&D, and I think it's like a good gateway to get them to see your company. Right.
Sure.
So
Totally.
that, if they really like the thing, then maybe they'll take a look at the other products that you're creating.
Yeah.
And I think like the barrier a lot of times from moving from D&D to another system is that like they don't want to learn new rules. But like when you're talking about something like Mork Borg and Vasgrim, like it's essentially like the same rules but a lot easier with less moving parts for them. Like you can just step right into those games and start playing.
Yeah, you can learn the rules to the game in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
and you're done, and you just get refreshed a little bit along the way, but everything's there.
Yeah, but at the same time, like I feel like it opens up a different part of the game that you're not exploring when you play games like D&D as much, because there's less going on your character sheet. You try to figure out how to do more with what's there,
right? Because you're not confined by what's listed. It's like you don't. It's not like I have to consult this to see what I'm able to do. It's you have to come up with what you're capable of outside of what's written on the sheet.
It's like games like that challenge the player more than they challenge the character, right? It's more about how can you think out of the box and use it a certain way. It's like, I don't know, I got this locker that follows me around that I can put stuff in. Can I stand it on its end and use it to like boost myself up to get up to something high or something? Where with D&D, you're like, oh, can I cast a spell? Do I have an ability? Can I make a check? Where OSR style games is more about like, here's this like obscure piece of equipment. Can I find a way to use it?
Yep.
So
I like that. I like, and for me, like anything that can challenge my brain while playing a game is the best is what I get the most enjoyment out of, which is part of why like almost all the games that I run, I kind of make up on the fly, because it forces me to come up with creative solutions to what the players come back with.
Quest is a game where it's like you have a D20, that's the only die. Like you don't even have stats in that game, but you do get like weird pieces of equipment that don't mean anything. It's not even that they're weird pieces; you just get equipment, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything in the game.
Sure, but do they add flavor to the character?
Well, yeah, they do, because Doug was playing in a game, and I think it was the first time he got to play as a player, in Quest, maybe the only time. And the theme was of this, the campaign was there was like some kind of shielding protecting the city or the world from the sun, and it was failing. So like that was the problem. And it just so happened he had sunscreen on his character sheet. And it's just like, I'm going to pull out my sunscreen and apply.
Awesome. That's great.
You know, and maybe it gives him some bonuses later on if he gets into a wrestling match or something, you know, to evade being grappled. I don't know.
Nice.
We are at the hour mark. Final thoughts before we head on out?
If you haven't checked it out yet, go check out Crawling Death Below the Dying Forest on GameFound. If you're into making games or creating content, get out there, put it out into the world. There's lots of people making different games, and you can get other people to play the things that you make, because there's lots of us out there that want to play your games.
So, as always, folks, there's links in the description for the GameFound project, as well as Brian's website. You see all the cool things that you're doing over there. And come on back tonight when we do the one-shot for Mork Borg. Brian will be running us through the adventure, so you can see how many rooms we can make it through before we all die horribly and possibly graphically. And until next time, stay nerdy.